Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into leadership, but with a twist.
Ooh, a twist.
What does it mean to lead when you're not the one in charge? We've got some really fascinating excerpts today.
I love this topic.
Yeah, me too. And we've got excerpts from Clay Scroggins' book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, and also a leadership development workbook
Oh, cool.
of the same name. So get ready, because we're going to learn how to kibosh our way to success, and why your boss might secretly be a sleeping rhinoceros.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And also how a milkshake revolutionized fast food.
All right, you've got my attention for sure. This is exciting.
I know, I'm excited too.
Because it really challenges our traditional view of leadership, you know?
Right.
Like we often think you need that fancy title to be a leader.
Right, exactly. And both of these sources argue that leadership is about influence, not authority. And it can come from anywhere.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you had a great idea at work,
Oh, totally.
but hesitated to share it because you weren't the boss?
All the time.
What?
Yeah. And that's where Scroggins' story about working in the governor's office comes in.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
He describes this heated meeting where someone actually yelled, "I am the governor. Listen to me."
Oh my gosh, can you imagine
I know.
feeling so insecure in your leadership that you have to remind everybody
You have to say it out loud.
that you're the governor?
I am the governor.
Like, wow, it really highlights that true leadership isn't about demanding respect based on your title.
If you have to say it,
Right.
you probably are.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, if someone has to constantly assert their authority,
Are they really leading?
are they truly leading?
Okay.
And this brings us to the idea of identity, which Scroggins argues is crucial for effective leadership,
Yes,
especially when you don't have that formal authority.
absolutely. And he uses the example of Frank Abagnale
Oh, yeah.
from Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, I love that movie.
Such a good movie.
Yeah.
Remember the guy who impersonated a pilot
Yes, and forged checks.
and forged checks, all that stuff?
Yeah.
So Scroggins says Frank's constant identity shifting
Yeah.
really shows what happens when you're not grounded in who you are.
You're just all over the place.
Totally. It's like trying on different passports, hoping one will magically make you feel complete.
Right. But true leadership requires authenticity.
Yes.
You can't lead effectively if you're constantly trying to be someone you're not.
So true.
And this whole fake it till you make it mentality,
So tempting.
it can be so tempting, especially when you're starting out.
I know.
But it's like using a fake ID, you might get in the door,
Right.
but you're not being true to yourself.
And I think we've all been guilty of exaggerating our abilities at some point.
Oh, for sure.
Like inflating our resume a little.
Yep. Or pretending to know more than we do.
Yeah, but that insecurity can actually hinder our leadership potential.
Absolutely. So how do we cultivate a strong sense of self? Scroggins tackles this idea of ambition.
Okay.
He doesn't say we should kill it entirely, but he cautions against letting it run wild.
Yeah.
It's interesting how he frames ambition.
Yeah. You know, I've heard people say ambition is inherently bad,
Oh, yeah.
but Scroggins presents a more nuanced perspective. He calls it holy ambition.
I love that.
Ambition guided by a sense of purpose and service.
Yes.
And I love his gardening analogy.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that one.
He says that just like a gardener has to control things like water and sunlight for a plant to thrive,
Right.
we have to manage our ambition so it doesn't become destructive.
So we don't drown the plant.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about channeling your ambition towards something meaningful,
Yes.
something bigger than yourself. And this connects to the Lead Me plan from the workbook.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
Having a clear vision for where you want to go and a plan to get there.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and both sources are big on this idea that you have to lead yourself before you can lead others.
Right.
Scroggins gets really personal here,
Yeah, he does.
sharing stories about how he discovered blind spots in his own leadership through feedback.
That's so important to be open to feedback. Oh, absolutely. And he talks about how he would seem distracted in conversations,
Wow.
making people feel unheard.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we all have areas where we can improve,
We all have blind spots.
even if we think we're pretty self-aware.
Right. So if we're trying to lead ourselves effectively,
Yeah.
where do we even start?
Well, the workbook lays out a helpful framework.
Okay.
It emphasizes understanding your strengths and weaknesses,
Okay.
setting personal goals,
Right.
and Scroggins learned actively seeking feedback.
I love that.
And it even gives a concrete example of a personal development plan.
Oh, cool.
So you have a starting point for self-reflection.
I think that's so helpful because a lot of people get stuck on the idea of self-leadership
Yeah,
without knowing how to put it into practice.
absolutely. And it all ties back to that self-awareness we were talking about earlier.
Right.
The better you know yourself,
The better you can lead.
the better you can lead both yourself and others.
Yes.
So self-leadership is a journey, not a destination.
Right. It's about constantly learning and growing, not just checking boxes.
I like that a lot. Okay, so we've talked about leading ourselves.
Yes.
But what about seeing the bigger picture when it comes to leadership?
Oh, that's so important. Both sources talk about the importance of stepping back and understanding how your work contributes to the overall goals.
It's like using the panoramic feature on your phone.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You're not just capturing a small piece, you're getting the whole landscape.
And the workbook connects this to the organization's mission and vision.
Oh, that makes sense.
When you understand how your work fits into those larger goals,
Yes.
it can give you a greater sense of purpose and ownership.
It's so true. Have you ever felt disconnected from your work, like you were just going through the motions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But when I can see how my work is contributing to something bigger,
Yes.
it's so much more motivating.
That's exactly what the workbook is getting at. It's about finding meaning in what you do,
Yes.
even if your day-to-day tasks aren't always glamorous, right? And this panoramic perspective can be really helpful when you're facing challenges too.
Oh, for sure.
If you get bogged down in the details, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture and feel defeated.
Totally.
But if you can zoom out, you might discover a new solution or a renewed sense of purpose.
It's about reframing those challenges as opportunities for growth.
I love that.
And speaking of growth, Scroggins dives into the importance of critical thinking
Yeah.
as a key leadership skill.
A key leadership skill, critical thinking.
Yes, he believes good leaders are constantly asking questions
Yes.
and noticing details, not just accepting things as they are.
To be curious.
Exactly. And he shares this interesting observation from sports commentator Colin Cowherd,
Oh, yeah, I like Colin Cowherd.
who noticed that many successful NFL quarterbacks come from smaller colleges.
Interesting.
And Cowherd's theory is that they had to fight harder for every opportunity,
Oh, that makes sense.
which made them more resilient and resourceful. They developed a more critical eye because they couldn't just coast on talent alone.
So true.
It's a fascinating idea. It challenges that assumption that the easiest path is always the best.
Right. Sometimes those obstacles.
Sometimes facing obstacles forces us to develop those crucial skills.
It makes you think.
It does, how we can reframe challenges as opportunities to grow.
Right. And Scroggins emphasizes that critical thinking isn't about complaining or being negative.
Right.
It's about wanting to improve things.
Yes.
It's about being proactive and finding solutions.
He even suggests scheduling thinking time, literally blocking off time on your calendar
You're kidding.
to step back and reflect.
Really?
It sounds silly, but he says his best ideas come to him in the shower,
That's so fun.
when it has that uninterrupted mental space.
That makes sense. We're so bombarded with information and distractions all day long.
All the time.
We need to create those mental breaks to actually process and think critically.
Absolutely. So we've talked about thinking critically. But what happens when you need to challenge someone in a position of authority?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's where Scroggins' concept of challenging up comes in, which is all about respectfully pushing back
Okay.
against those in charge.
Respectfully, though.
Respectfully, it's a delicate balance, right?
Yes.
You want to advocate for your ideas,
Yes.
but you don't want to come across as disrespectful or insubordinate.
That's a tough one.
Exactly. And Scroggins cautions against those common pitfalls,
Okay.
like assuming you have all the answers or
Yeah.
blaming others.
Oh, yeah.
He tells this captivating story about the Chick-fil-A milkshake.
Okay. I'm ready for this one.
Did you know it almost didn't make it onto the menu?
I did not know that.
This franchise owner, Shane Todd,
Okay.
was convinced that a milkshake would be a hit,
Right.
but the corporate team wasn't buying it.
Wow.
Instead of giving up, Todd went rogue and started experimenting with milkshakes in his own store.
He did.
Wait, he went behind their backs to make milkshakes.
He did.
That's gutsy.
He was so confident in his idea
Wow.
that he conducted secret milkshake experiments, gathering data and customer feedback to support his case. Talk about leading when you're not in charge.
That's amazing.
And guess what? His persistence paid off. The Chick-fil-A milkshake we all know and love is a direct result of his willingness to challenge up.
That is incredible. What a story.
I love that story.
It shows that anyone can drive positive change if they're willing to take initiative and champion their ideas,
Yes.
even when they're facing resistance.
I love that. And that's a perfect example of leadership in action, regardless of your position.
Absolutely.
But speaking of serving others, both sources emphasize a servant-hearted approach to leadership.
Oh, this is so important.
I know.
True leadership isn't about power or control. It's
Yeah.
about using your influence to empower others and make a
Yes.
positive impact.
And Scroggins shares this really moving story from his days as a mover.
Oh, wow.
He and his team were struggling to lift this heavy pool table. And this older gentleman kept encouraging them, saying, "Don't let it beat ya. Don't let it beat ya."
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
It's such a simple phrase, but it speaks volumes
Well, yeah.
about the perseverance required to lead, especially when you're facing challenges.
And encouraging others.
And it highlights the importance of supporting and encouraging others.
A true leader isn't afraid to get their hands dirty
That's right.
and help others succeed. It's not about delegating tasks and taking all the credit.
Right.
It's about being present, offering support, and celebrating the successes of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had someone offer that kind of encouragement
You know, I have.
when you were struggling?
Yeah, and it made all the difference.
Me too.
It reminded me that I wasn't alone, and it gave me the strength to keep going.
Exactly, and that's the power of servant leadership.
It is.
It's about putting the needs of others before your own.
And Scroggins links this idea of servant leadership back to the life of Jesus. He reminds us that Jesus never abused his authority. He led with influence, compassion, and a deep commitment to serving others.
That's a powerful reminder that true leadership is rooted in humility and service,
Yes.
not ego or self-promotion.
And as we move forward in our discussion,
Yeah.
it's crucial to keep this concept of servant leadership in mind. How can we apply these principles in our own lives?
Right.
Regardless of our current roles or positions, that's something worth reflecting on.
That's a great point. It's inspiring to think about how we can all strive to be more servant-hearted leaders, even in small ways.
Absolutely. And speaking of leadership development, let's dive into some of the insights from the workbook, specifically the section on systems leadership and change.
Okay, so systems leadership, what's that all about?
Well, the workbook explains that organizations are like complex systems, with interconnected parts and constantly changing relationships.
Right.
Leading within a system requires a different approach than traditional top-down leadership.
So it's not just about giving orders and expecting people to follow.
Exactly. It's about understanding how the system works, identifying areas where you can make an impact, and working collaboratively with others to create positive change.
That makes sense. But how do you actually do that? It sounds a bit abstract.
Yeah, well, the workbook introduces this really cool tool called Rich Pictures.
Rich pictures, what are those?
Think of it like a visual map of a situation.
Okay.
You use symbols, images, and words to represent the different people, relationships, and dynamics involved.
So kind of like a family tree, but for an organization or a project?
Exactly. It helps you see the bigger picture and
see.
identify patterns that might not be obvious at first glance.
Okay.
Plus, it's a great way to get everyone on the same page and encourage collaborative problem solving.
That sounds really helpful, especially when you're dealing with a complex issue.
It is, and the workbook also talks about actor maps, which are similar to stakeholder maps.
Okay.
They help you identify the key individuals and groups involved in a particular issue or decision.
Okay, but why is that important? Don't we already know who the stakeholders are?
It's more than just listing names and titles,
Right.
Actor maps encourage you to think about each person's perspective,
Okay.
interests and motivations. Everyone comes to the table with their own experiences and agendas.
Right.
And understanding those differences can help you build relationships and create coalitions for change.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We often make assumptions about people's motivations
Yeah.
without truly understanding where they're coming from.
Right. And the workbook also emphasizes the power of narrative. The stories we tell ourselves and others about who we are and what we believe. And it suggests that if we don't consciously shape our own narratives, others will do it for us.
It's so true. We've all been in situations where someone misinterprets our actions or intentions.
Yeah.
And it can be really frustrating.
It is so. And it's important to be mindful of the messages we're communicating, both through our words and actions.
Right.
We need to ensure they align with our values and our vision for the future.
So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it and what we do.
Exactly. And speaking of how we interact with others, the workbook has a whole section on relational skills.
Okay.
It emphasizes the importance of building authentic, trust-based relationships.
Right.
Especially when you're leading without formal authority.
It makes sense. If you're not relying on your title to get people to do things, you need to build strong relationships based on trust and mutual respect.
Right. And the workbook points out that in a traditional hierarchy, people often comply because they're afraid of being punished or they want a reward.
Right.
But when you're leading from a place of influence,
Yeah.
commitment is what holds everything together, and that commitment comes from strong relationships.
Absolutely. And relationships are built through a willingness to invest time and energy,
Yeah,
to learn from each other and to grow together.
absolutely.
So it's not just about being friendly or going to happy hour with your colleagues. It's about creating spaces
Right.
where people feel safe to share their ideas and challenge assumptions.
Absolutely. And the workbook offers some fascinating insights into different styles of influencing.
Okay.
It breaks down 3 main approaches: persuading, asserting, and attracting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these influencing styles.
All right, well, persuading is most effective when you're seen as an expert. You know,
Right.
you have access to unique information, or you need to make a quick decision.
So it's about using your knowledge and credibility to convince others.
Exactly. Now, asserting is more appropriate when you need to set clear boundaries, enforce accountability, or address a critical issue that needs immediate attention.
So it's a more direct approach where you're clearly stating your expectations and holding people accountable.
Yes. And then there's attracting, which is all about inspiring others,
Okay,
creating buy-in for a shared vision,
I like that.
and fostering a culture of collaboration and innovation.
So attracting is about drawing people in with your passion and enthusiasm, getting them excited about a shared goal.
Precisely. And the workbook emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. The key is to choose the right influencing style for each situation,
Yeah.
recognizing that what works in one context might not work in another.
And this ties back to self-awareness. The better you know yourself, your strengths and your tendencies, the better you can choose the styles that feel most authentic to you and will resonate with others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about generating commitment.
Okay.
The workbook stresses the importance of understanding the interests and motivations of the people you're trying to influence.
Yeah.
It's about digging deeper than surface-level assumptions.
So it's about understanding what makes people tick, what their hopes and fears are, and what they value most.
Yes. And then you can frame your message in a way that connects with those interests and motivations.
It's about highlighting the benefits, addressing concerns, and showing how your vision aligns with their values and aspirations.
Right. It's not about manipulating people. It's about finding common ground and building genuine buy-in.
Right.
And of course, trust and credibility are essential. You need to demonstrate competence, be transparent, and follow through on your commitments.
That makes sense. You can't expect people to follow you if they don't trust you or believe in your abilities.
And speaking of trust, the workbook also provides strategies for navigating conflict.
Ooh, good one.
It's inevitable when you're working with others to create change.
Conflict can be so uncomfortable, it's tempting to just avoid it altogether.
I know, right? But the workbook encourages us to see conflict as an opportunity for learning and growth.
Okay.
It emphasizes active listening, seeking to understand different perspectives, and finding common ground.
So it's about approaching conflict with curiosity and a willingness to learn rather than defensiveness or anger.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to focus on the issue at hand,
Right.
not on personal attacks or emotional outbursts.
Okay, that makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Now let's talk about power.
Okay.
The workbook acknowledges that power dynamics exist in every organization,
Right.
even those that try to be flat and collaborative.
Power can be such a loaded word. What does the workbook say about it?
It defines power as the ability to influence others and achieve desired outcomes.
Okay.
And it points out that power can come from various sources,
Right.
not just formal authority.
So things like expertise, relationships, access to information, even personal charisma can be forms of power.
Exactly. And the workbook encourages us to be aware of these different forms of power and how they operate within our organizations.
So it's about understanding how power dynamics influence decisions and interactions, even in subtle ways.
Right. And it's about using power responsibly and ethically, recognizing that it can be both constructive and destructive.
That's an important point. Power can be used to empower others or to control and manipulate them.
And the workbook offers some strategies for navigating power dynamics in a positive way.
Like what?
Things like building coalitions,
Okay.
amplifying the voices of those who are often marginalized, and challenging systems that perpetuate inequality.
So it's about using your power to create a more equitable and just environment, not just to advance your own agenda.
Exactly. And it's about empowering others.
Yes.
Recognizing the leadership potential in everyone and creating opportunities for others to step up and make a difference.
That's really inspiring.
Hmm.
It makes you think about how you can use your own influence, however big or small, to make a positive impact.
And finally, the workbook touches on the importance of self-care and resilience.
Oh, that's a good one.
When you're leading in challenging circumstances,
Yes.
leading change can be incredibly demanding, both physically and emotionally.
It's easy to burn out when you're constantly pushing for change and dealing with resistance.
Right, and the workbook encourages us to prioritize our well-being,
Yeah.
set boundaries, and seek support when we need it.
Self-care is so important, but it's often the first thing to go when we're feeling overwhelmed.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking we have to sacrifice ourselves to be effective leaders.
Right.
But the truth is, we can't pour from an empty cup.
That's so true.
We need to take care of ourselves so we can continue showing up as our best selves for others.
That's such a good point. It's not selfish to prioritize self-care. It's essential for sustainable leadership.
Exactly, and it's about building a support system,
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with people who can offer encouragement, guidance, and a listening ear when you need it most.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to do it all alone. We can lean on others for support and encouragement. This has been an incredible deep dive. I'm already feeling inspired to step up my leadership game.
Me too. And it's exciting to think about how these insights can be applied in so many different areas of our lives, from our workplaces to our communities to our families.
It's amazing how these concepts could be applied in so many different aspects of our lives. It's not just about leading at work, it's about leading in our relationships.
In our communities.
In our community.
Even in our families.
Yeah, and it really emphasizes that idea that anyone can be a leader.
Right.
Regardless of their title or position. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what were some of the key takeaways that resonated most with you?
That's a good question. For me, it's the emphasis on self-awareness and the Lead Me plan. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day
Right.
and lose sight of our long-term goals. Having a plan helps us stay focused and intentional about our growth.
I love that. And for me, it's that panoramic perspective, seeing how our work fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Gives it so much more meaning and purpose.
It's about understanding how our individual contributions, no matter how small they might seem,
Right.
can make a difference.
And what I find so empowering about these sources is that they offer a hopeful and encouraging message about leadership. You don't have to wait for a promotion or a fancy title to start leading.
Exactly. You can lead from anywhere.
From anywhere.
In any situation.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to consider.
Ooh, are you ready for this?
I am. Okay, here it is.
Wait, hold on. Let me grab a pen and paper. I
Wait.
need to write this down.
I think you remember this one.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the final thought?
Think about this. If you were to lead from a place of service, how would that change your approach at work, in your community, even in your family?
Wow, that's powerful. It really makes you think,
Yeah.
about how our interactions and relationships would shift if we approached them with a genuine desire to serve others.
It has the potential to transform not just our own lives, but also the lives of those around us.
And that's the beauty of leadership, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about climbing the ladder or seeking recognition.
Right?
It's about lifting others up and making a positive impact on the world.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Join us next time as we explore the fascinating world of topic for the next episode.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading.
From wherever you are, see you next time.